year and a half ago when Netflix announced that they're making all these new Marvel properties from Daredevil to Jessica Jones to Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and they're all going to come together and make the Defenders, I got really excited. I had no idea who Jessica Jones was, and even to this day, a year and a half later, I still had no idea who the character was. I really enjoyed Daredevil, so I went to this brand new show, Jessica Jones, with zero expectations. I literally knew nothing about the character. I had maybe heard about, you know, her relationship with Luke Cage and maybe her powers having super strength. That's it. Having finished season 1 of Jessica Jones, I was pleasantly surprised. The story follows Jessica Jones, and more importantly, it's in this new Netflix series, which is kind of a subcategory in the greater MCU. Yeah, I know, it's confusing. It's like Daredevil and such, which is very dark and gritty, and it definitely carries that tone from Daredevil into this show, Jessica Jones, and maybe even more so. They really push the boundaries of what they can do in this show, which is great to see on television, because, you know, you can't really see this in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., although they are also pushing the boundaries of what they do. The story follows Jessica Jones, played by Kristen Ritter, who is a PI who lives in Hell's Kitchen, who also has superpowers. This story follows her, and she's very traumatized because this person named Kilgrave from her past resurfaces, and he caused a lot of traumatic stress to her. Kilgrave, aka Kevin, aka Purple Man, is a villain from the comic books. Basically, anything he says, the person does. So if he said go jump off a bridge, you would jump off a bridge. If he says stab yourself 100,000 times, you would stab yourself 100,000 times. Well, not really 100,000, like you can't stab yourself that many times, you'd be dead after like 3. Jessica Jones, who is an alcoholic and just struggling after she realizes that this person who caused so much trouble in her life, Kilgrave, is back. It pretty much just follows her, you know, figuring out he's alive. It pretty much goes between back and forth between Kilgrave trying to get her, and then her trying to get Kilgrave, and ultimately her goal is to kill him because he is too much for the world to handle. No, like seriously, like this show is about like Kilgrave, and he's such a selfish prick, and she has to deal with living in that world where he's obsessed with her and like she just wants him dead. It's really problematic. And you can imagine a guy who can control your mind would be pretty difficult to deal with, right? Because you just go up to him and he would just like tell you to stab yourself. What's really interesting is this show really plays with the possibility of Kilgrave's powers. Maybe not so much as I wanted to, but it still does it. There's a lot of scary and like complicated situations, obviously, when David Tennant speaks and him and Jessica get in some conflicts, because there's always contingency plans where she gets screwed over because he has like 20 people about to die. Of course, Jessica isn't alone. Throughout the whole entire series, she has a great supporting cast and friends along with her. She has her love interest, Luke Cage. She also has her best friend, Trish Walker. And she also got her, you know, junkie best friend in her neighborhood, Malcolm. This was our very first introduction to Luke Cage in MCU and this Netflix little mini MCU, and guys, my culture was fantastic. As we all know, Luke Cage is getting his own series. To see him for the first time in Jessica Jones, I think he did a pretty solid job. I think he had a pretty prominent position in the show, and we can imagine that Jessica Jones is gonna have a pretty prominent position in his own show. And yes, no spoilers, guys, he has his powers already, okay? Sorry. Some of the other side cast is Trish Walker. She is Jessica Jones' childhood best friend turned sister, and we learn a lot about her past and how she's pretty traumatized from Kilgrave because she knows about him too, and she ends up training, and we learn a lot about Trish and her backstory and how Jessica and her end up becoming sisters, and it's a pretty sad background. The other supporting cast is Malcolm. He's pretty much just a junkie who lives in Jessica Jones' building, and we find out the backstory between them, and it's pretty slow burn, but we end up seeing this character and what he does and his purpose. Jessica Jones acts really kind to this character, even though he doesn't really deserve it until we figure out stuff about the character, and of course, he ultimately reciprocates the kindness back to her. There was a ton of great stuff in this show, but there's also good, and then there's bad. I'm just gonna dive right into the good and the bad. The good stuff about this show. Okay, the main focus of this show is not the powers that she has and oh my gosh, she can kind of fly or she can punch through walls. It's the fact that it's about the story and it's character driven. It focuses on this character's trauma and basically being like mentally, physically like raped pretty much, and it's her just trying to get past that and move forward and stop this guy. It also has to deal with her like, you know, everyday problems like her alcoholism and all these other things that's very relatable to a lot of people in this world. I'm not going to talk about Jessica Jones, the actual character. I'm going to talk about the person who played the character, Kristen Ritter. She did a phenomenal performance as Jessica Jones, and after watching this show, I really can't picture anybody else playing Jessica Jones. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's such a unique role, and I think Kristen Ritter did it perfect. She really delivered on her acting chops in terms of all the sad scenes, even the somewhat upbeat moments, and I thought she nailed it. Like, the whole thing. The villain in every Marvel show and movie has never been the greatest, you know, with the exceptions of Loki, anti-hero, whatever. Kingpin and Daredevil recently, that's kind of it. Kilgrave was an amazing villain. He was scary, he was vile, he was selfish, and I thought he did a great job. Every time this dude was on the screen, I was like glued to my TV / laptop monitor. Like, he was killing it every performance he was in. I don't know if it had to do with his accent. I kind of just like the accent. Like, you really love to hate this guy. Like, he was so evil, all the things he did, and he gave no, like, shits about anyone in this show. Like, he would tell someone to, like, jump off a bridge, like, stab yourself. Like, it was just, oh my gosh, seeing these situations that like you would imagine a selfish person having these kind of powers. Seeing it was ridiculous. All the scenes with Kilgrave and Jessica Jones in like the second half of the season when they're actually together were like the best moments of the show, hands down. The animosity just waiting for these two characters to finally be with each other and see how that like works out was just great. I thought they had pretty good chemistry in terms of like, you know, their negativity towards one each other. Good. The supporting cast was probably one of the highlights of this show too. Like I mentioned about Luke Cage, I kind of talked to him already, but I needed to talk about it again because, guys, this is the introduction before his own Netflix series, and I didn't just like him. I loved him! I really don't think we could have got a better Luke Cage. Maybe there was Terry Crews, like he was literally Luke Cage, but that can again. All of his scenes in the series for the most part were great. I felt that his and Jessica Jones' relationship was natural and it felt genuine. Like every time she was with him on screen, you could see they really had something for each other. I thought the story arc had good context and made sense within the story and going on throughout, you know, the next Netflix shows and the Defenders. I can't wait to see this character evolve and develop as the Netflix series shows go on with Jessica Jones as well, because obviously they're kind of together now. This one scene where Jessica reveals this big kind of nugget of information to Luke. Oh, guy's face is just like, oh man, I feel for the guy. It's so bad. Mike Coulter, you were really good as Luke Cage. Can't wait to see you. Where's Danny? Where's Danny at? Where's your boy? Come on, man. The rest of the supporting cast also made the show really great. I'm talking about Malcolm and Trish. These two characters really made the show for me in terms of the story, like how they're played in it and their character development. Malcolm in the beginning of the show is a junkie that Jessica Jones just always helps, and by the end of it, he goes through this emotional and just character development, and he becomes like completely different than when we initially see him at. By the end of the series, he actually goes through development more so than Jessica. This was great to see because for the first 5 episodes, I was like, okay, what's he doing? Like, he's a bum, like what? Isn't later on in the series, so we find out what his purpose is, and I found it was great. It was really nice to see Trish's character in the show as well. We see her as Patsy, the, you know, the celebrity on TV as a kid who grows up in this lifestyle, and she ends up becoming a talk show host, and her and Jessica are still best friends who have a rocky relationship at first. By the end of the series, we see, you know, all this background with this character and her mother and all this nonsense, and we also figure out that her and Jessica are not just best friends, but they're sisters, and that whole sad relationship and how that went about in terms of, you know, her upbringing and her Jessica like kind of being friends out of a bad situation, but it ends up being good, and it's just great to see that transformation from the character from then till now. She also is like a badass fighter who has like a triple locked door, and she apparently is Hellcat from the comic books. For people who know that, we'll probably see her later on if there's a season 2. Who knows? Maybe in the Defender she'll help out. Now I'm going to talk about the bad stuff in this show, and there was kind of a lot of it. Straight off the bat, my #1 pet peeve, still like fresh in my mind because it's pissing me off. The Simpsons, everyone online is just like, oh, he's Nuke from the comic books. I don't care. Okay, I'm not just trying to be a hater, but like he started off like a good character. Honestly, I really enjoyed him for like about half of the series, and then towards the end when he started like being in unnecessary scenes and like he was written like kind of lazily, and then he started popping these red pills and shit like the Matrix, and then he was part of this IGN like super soldier program apparently in the past when he was hurt, then he needs to call them. Like it was so stupid. I'm sorry, it was dumb. Once it got to that point, I just had a really big distaste for the character, and like it just bothered me for the rest of the series. And I genuinely did like this show, guys. Like I liked it, but there was problems. And another thing was I felt this thing was too long. I think this has to deal with, you know, the Netflix series and their deal. I think every single of these new Netflix Marvel shows are going to be 13 episodes in length, and that's a problem for me. I feel like Jessica Jones, if they had cut it down to maybe like 8 solid episodes, I felt like it would have been fantastic. It being 13 episodes, they had to draw out the story like a little bit further. They had to put unnecessary side plots. They kind of dragged it on like a little too long, and there was things that shouldn't have been there. These stupid side plots, like it got repetitive. A lot of things in the show also got pretty stale and just boring to me. Like they got like, I'm like, okay, this is like why should I watch this? This is just her taking her shit. Like it was not things I wanted to see. Like it wasn't good. I felt around the episode like 3 to 6 mark, it just got boring, and I'm like, ugh, what is this? That being said though, I thought the show picked up its pace around episode 7. I think till the end it pretty much kept a good pace, and it got a little stupid towards the end, but for the most part after episode 7 it got pretty good in terms of story and pacing. If they cut up those 3 episodes and some unnecessary stuff later on, I thought the show could have been perfectly packaged like that. Instead it's like 13. The show also, in terms of story, it got somewhat predictable. Like I called a bunch of these things out, although there were some things that really were surprising, but most of those were like how like twists in terms of like who's gonna die, like what's gonna turn this situation around. It was more of those kind of things and not the actual kind of story. Oh my god, the budget, man. Come on, Marvel, you got that Disney money. Okay, touching on Daredevil again, that show didn't feel like it was like a low budget, because I'm pretty sure all these Netflix shows aren't the highest budget, but it didn't feel like it. Like it felt like it was actual quality, and you can see it in the show. Like it looks legit. Watching Jessica Jones, I didn't feel that. Honestly, half the time I was watching the set, when she's bursting through the walls and stuff punching people, you could see it's like cardboard, dude. Like it was like ridiculous. Like, oh my god. Also the fact, the way they shot it, where they didn't want to show her using like her powers and have to use CG and cost money, obviously they showed like cuts of her just like kind of, oh, there's a building, I'm gonna jump. and it would cut to her just landing like, ah, that was really hard. It just bothered me the way they didn't show her powers, and I kind of felt like the show was also weirdly edited at times too. A choice in plot, I wasn't the biggest fan of the whole Kilgrave parents kind of thing. Towards the end with drawing out the father everywhere, that just got like, eh. But although I'm gonna say the way he died, like, the directing of the show sometimes too, it was pretty, once in a while it got pretty cringeworthy, but for the most part it was decent. It was nothing outstanding though, I'm not gonna like, it was nothing like worth like claps, no, not at all. This bothered me specifically, maybe it didn't bother you, but just for me personally, I didn't like Jessica Jones. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Kristen Ritter, and I can acknowledge she did a really great performance, but the actual character of Jessica Jones, like, I just hated her. Like, she was just like a bitch. When you get a story of a character, like, for the most part, you should see the person start off here, go through a bunch of stuff, and be a different person by the end. But for her, she was a shitty person here, and at the end, she was the same shitty person who learned something. I guess I understand the aspect of it being like she went through things, and not every single person, once they go through stuff, they're automatically different, but like, she was just the same person, and even at the end with the phone calls, she didn't pick it up. Like, come on, be like, I saved someone, now let me save more people. She didn't do that, and it just bothered me, really. They had that disconnect from the development of the character, and it just didn't work with me. The last thing that really was just unnecessary and just showed them dragging out the plot was the whole Kilgrave, you know, trying to become super. They really shoehorned that whole aspect of him just trying to, like, get his powers even more stronger, and the stupidest part about it, oh my god, it's not even explained or, like, shown properly. I thought it was a complete waste of time. It was just useless to the story. I'm not trying to spoil it for anyone, but like, it shows him getting his powers, becoming stronger, and he yells after that, he says, stop, and everyone stops, right? But then before any of that happened, he was in a restaurant, and he yells, and it's the same situation, and everyone shuts up. So it's just like, wait, where did his powers? Like, there's no real gauge, you know? Jessica Jones season 1, guys, I liked it. There was things I had wrong with it. I loved the Kristen Ritter and the performances in the show, and some of the characters that were actually played, and I can't wait to see them in later Netflix shows and MCU. There are certain character choices and just length and the budget in the show that really bummed it out for me, to be honest. I'm really intrigued though. I wouldn't mind seeing a season 2 of Jessica Jones, but just seeing the way that Marvel's working right now, I doubt we would see it. I already know they're working on Daredevil season 2, Luke Cage, and they're still trying to get Iron Fist, so I think Jessica Jones can take a seat for now. I'm gonna go ahead and give Jessica Jones season 1 a 7 out of 10. Guys, let me know what you thought about Jessica Jones. I know a lot of you guys enjoyed my Jessica Jones reaction for the episode 1, and I didn't get to do it for the other episodes just because time and like school and all this other stuff. So I just wanted to get this out for you guys instead. So guys, let me know what you thought about Jessica Jones season 1. Were there things you liked, you didn't like? What really is your pet peeves with the show? And what do you want to see in the next season if they get one, or in like another Netflix show? Anyway guys, that's it for me today. I'll see you next time.